In-Death is the Dark Souls of VR. Okay, I'm only half joking. There are a lot of similarities between the two, such as medieval Gothic architecture and themes, undead enemies, knights, a sense of dread that kind of permeates the air, combat that encourages caution and heavily focuses on dodging, intimidating bosses, fog doors, etc. I'm sure there's a few more that I just couldn't think of. Now, In-Death is basically a VR archery game that has heavy medieval Gothic Catholic settings, themes, and music. As you make your way through chunk-based, procedurally generated cathedrals, towers, abbeys, hallways, bridges, courtyards, you'll be sneaking around, firing arrows at groups of enemies, trying to pick them off before they can reach you or fire back. The game is separated into 3 distinct levels. Purgatory is the starting area with the easiest enemies and terrain. The pits are an optional smaller area accessed through portals found in Purgatory that are hellish in nature with more difficult enemies. Clearing a pit will give you rewards in the form of items, before spitting you back out where you entered. Paradise Lost is the 3rd level after completing Purgatory and defeating the first boss. Paradise Lost has much more difficult enemies and a heavenly theme with brighter, taller architecture, leading to the final boss. If you defeat the final boss, the game will cycle you through another Purgatory, Purgatory 2, and then Paradise Lost 2. This cycle will increase the difficulty of these areas and bosses until you lose. There is also a shopping area that can be entered if a shop tower is nearby for you to enter. You can buy items in this area using gold you earn by killing enemies. Locomotion in the game is handled through teleportation, for the most part, with an optional choice to turn on free motion in the settings that is slow but can be useful if you master it. Long-term progress in the game is made through achievements. These achievements are shown to you at the start of the game with conditions like kill 20 monks, headshot over 70 meters, and clear pit of reformation. Every achievement completed will change the world in some way, such as adding new items or enemies. There are a few tools you can use in the game other than the bow, starting with the teleportation shard/arrow. The arrow can be notched and fired from the bow for long-distance, accurate teleporting. The shard is faster and can be thrown with one-handed getaways, but is less accurate, and can't be thrown as far as notching the arrow. You also start with a shield that can be used to block enemy projectiles and enemy swings. The crossbow can be unlocked fairly early by completing a few achievements, and is essentially an easier to use and what seems like an all-around better version of the bow. All items in the game are consumables, made up by special arrows with effects like trip mine, explosions, lightning, fire, freezing, a whole bunch of different effects, and healing items. These items can be found floating around the map, or as drops by killing enemies, rewards for clearing an area, or even bought just from the shop using whatever gold you earn killing enemies. There are a lot of different enemies in the game. You'll face abominations that are weak and die quickly, but will charge you in numbers, knights who are armored and can throw axes if you are out of reach of their swords, monks who are much like yourself in their ability to teleport and rely almost solely on arrows to attack, ghosts which can move through walls, are an immortal to everything but an arrow to the heart, and much, much more. Tips for the game would be to make sure you never bite off more than you can chew, as enemies will follow you quite a ways before losing aggro. The bow requires a drawback to control for damage and distance. Short drawbacks will do little damage and barely travel, while long drawbacks will travel much further and do a lot more damage. You can also slow down time by bringing up the arrow selection. It will allow you to assess a situation before returning to normal time to fire and retreat. Positioning yourself on top of roofs and ledges will give you an advantage for headshots and prevent melee enemies from reaching you. Remember, when an enemy is attacking you, room scale dodging is a thing, so you can dodge enemy arrows or sidestep enemy sword swings if you don't have enough time to teleport away or kill them. The crossbow is essentially the game's unintentional easy mode. The crossbow is much easier to aim and can fire rapidly. It also does a set amount of damage, as it doesn't require the drawback that the bow does when firing for increased damage. The game does have a somewhat competitive side, with leaderboard high scores and a rank system that challenges other players for 30-minute high score sessions. These challenges are tied to the game's achievement system as well, encouraging competition among players. You will get a feel for the game rather quickly, but completing your first few areas will take a long time, and mastering it will be extremely difficult. In-Death is all about try, die, repeat, so expect to be discouraged over and over again, showing only gradual improvement as you get better at the game, and gain a little bit of long-term progress through your achievements and through your general knowledge of how the game works and your skill at it. My problems with the game would be that the bow comes off as a little underpowered and the crossbow as a little overpowered. Using the bow feels like you're playing the game with only one hand, as you are very limited due to the required motions to do very simple tasks, as both your hands will be required to do everything, so you can't really do much with your offhand when you're in combat. Using the crossbow feels like you're using an SMG in a bow game. Somehow balancing this to make it so that the crossbow can't be spammed as much and the bow has the ease of motion and control that the crossbow does would really help to make the choice between the two less obvious. Overall motion outside of the crossbow teleport arrows is rather clunky and inaccurate, or at least it feels like it. A more intuitive interactive multiplayer would also be rather nice, as the high score leaderboard is only really appealing to high skilled players and players that care about spamming challenges to rank up. I consider In-Death to be what is quite likely the best VR archery game so far. And that's saying something, because there are quite a few VR archery games out there. It's a definite buy for most people that enjoy try, die, repeat cycle of slow improvement. I look forward to improving myself and eventually making it to the final boss for the first time. Haven't actually been able to get that far through Paradise Lost, but here's to hoping. And eventually, after many defeats and overcoming and clearing the game, I hope to play more. It's actually a really fun game. I encourage anyone who thinks that any of this seems slightly interesting to give it a try.